So have you invested in real estate before? Have you flipped maybe or have a rental before and you kind of feel stuck? You don't know how to scale, right? You can't flip more houses. The idea of building a larger rental portfolio seems to boggle the mind and you're kind of scratching your head right now going, what is going on with this whole thing? Something seems to be broken. How do I get to financial freedom? How do I scale this thing, right? If that's for you, then I'm talking to you right now. I'm going to talk to you about scaling with multifamily properties. So I'm going to talk to you about how to do that in the beginning, even though you might think it's an advanced strategy. You might not have the experience or the money to do that. So I'm going to tell you how to get into the game. Let's do this. Hey, my name is Michael Blanc, and I help people become financially free with real estate. So something about the single family house investing strategy you're pursuing and so many others, the kind that Robert Kiyosaki seems to be writing in his Rich Dad, Poor Dad, doesn't seem to be working. It's just not generating enough money, not generating enough income. It's not passive enough. It's a lot of work and I can't scale it. And so I had the same struggles, okay? When I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, of course, the conclusion is I'm going to flip houses, I'm going to do some rentals. Back in 2005 and 6, when I read the book, I actually had a rental, and then 2006, by 7, before the recession, I had done 2 flips. So I thought I was pretty established. And later on, back in 2009 and 2013, I actually started flipping houses. We did about 3 dozen in 3 years. It was a pretty big operation, I thought. And it was actually very profitable, but it was a lot of work. And then the other thing is if I'm not buying, fixing, and selling, I wasn't making money. That's not passive. And then when I sold it, the money would stop flowing. And so after 3 years of this stuff, I kind of scratched my head and going, what is going on here, right? So that's not going to work. And I said, well, maybe instead of selling these flips, maybe I'll just hold them. And I did some light math. I said, hey, if I can make each of these things cash flow $200, which would have been a lot, but let's say I can do that, and I want $10,000 in passive income, I would need 50 houses, right? Is that insane? 50 houses? Like, it took me 3 years just to buy 3 dozen. It would take me 5 years if I bought 10 a year. I was like, how am I going to buy 10 a year? How am I going to finance it? I can't use hard money for that, right? So I really felt stuck. And I finally discovered the solution a little bit by accident when I got into an apartment building in 2011 through one of my wholesalers in DC. And that was a nightmare. It's another story for another time, just because I didn't have any kind of help or mentorship or anything like that. I just kind of got into it like an idiot, and it was a nightmare. But about 18 months after the nightmare subsided, okay, it got a little boring. And it was just sending me mailbox money every month, $1,500. And I was, at one point, this is when I woke up, I'm like, my gosh, what is going on here? I should do more of this and stop doing these freaking flips. And that's kind of when the light bulb went off a little bit. And that's when I started pivoting, right? Because this is really the way to scale. I don't need 50 properties with multifamily. I just need a few, right? Even if I start with a 12 units, right? If I can buy a 12 unit, right? If I can do that, then I can buy a 20 unit. If I can buy a 20 unit, I can probably buy a 50 unit. If I can buy a 50 unit, I can probably buy a 75 unit. And now I'm at 100 units, right? So within like 3 deals, I'm already at 75 units. And the profits from these multifamily deals are staggering. I mean, they're amazing. Like, for example, our students, people working with us, we've studied this. The average deal size is $4 million. The first deal, the average and it takes them about 6 months to get their first deal under contract. That's wild. Now, as you know, on that $4 million deal, right? This is how the profit centers break down. It's important to know as beginners on how you're trying to scale your portfolio. You have this thing called acquisition fees, right? You get 3% of the purchase price, and you charge that at closing when you buy it for putting the deal together, for mining through 150 deals that didn't work, right? For raising the capital, putting the proper manager in place, doing all these things, you get paid 3% for you and your partner or your partners. That's $120,000 on this $4 million deal. That's crazy. And a lot of times there's 2 partners, right? There's a deal finding partner and a capital raising partner. They're all joint ventures. So there's $60,000 for each. Let's say I got a burn rate of $10,000 a month. Now I got 6-month runway. Now you got another 6 months saved up. There's 12 months. And this is why so many people can quit their job after their first deal. It's such that acquisition fee is such a powerful money chunking thing that you don't get in the BRRRR method, for example, or even rentals. You don't get that big chunk up front, right? With the BRRRR method, at least you get your money back when you refinance, and we'll flip, you get it when you sell. That's cool, but I want it up front, I want it during, and then I want it at the end. And apartment buildings do all three of that. And the acquisition fee is a big, big driver of that. Then, of course, there's cash flows from that. There's something called asset management fees that you charge for managing the asset. And of course, there's profits at the end. If you look at a typical $4 million deal, over 5 years, including all those things, acquisition fees, asset management, cash flow, and profits, that $4 million deal generates $600,000 over 5 years. $600,000, about $125,000 a year per average, just one deal. And you might go, oh my gosh, how am I going to buy a $4 million deal? That's another topic for another day, exactly. But the short answer is that you're not going to do it alone. Okay, very few people do syndications on their own. Now, I did it. That's also why I also only did a 12 unit. That's why I struggled with it and almost lost my shirt doing it, because I was doing it alone. You don't have to do that anymore, right? You can actually follow a proven system. You can plug into an ecosystem with a network of capital raisers and deal finders. You can plug into ecosystem with a support, a community, like-minded people, advisors, mentors. All these things are already out there, right? It's already in place. So you don't need to do that. And the biggest thing for me, the biggest departure is that I just insisted on doing everything myself. And that's really held me back when you're trying to scale. And so you don't need to do it your own. In fact, you should really start establishing and thinking about a who, not how mentality. There's a book by Dan Sullivan called Who, Not How, which is fascinating. If you haven't read it yet, go ahead and read that book because it shifts everything. If you want to do something at scale, something significant, anyone who does anything of significance, do they do it on their own? No, they never do. There's always a team built around them. And who, not how, really takes the pressure off you to have to do everything yourself. Instead, you build a team. That's exactly what a syndication is. Syndication is a team. Almost in definition of syndication, it implies you can't do it by yourself. And this allows you to scale. This who, not how mentality is exactly what allows you to scale and takes all your effort that you're doing in a single family house strategy and applies that same amount of work to simply a bigger transaction. And that transaction will become bigger and bigger and bigger. And before you know it, within a year, or not much more than a year, you're quitting your job and you're building now a multi-million-dollar business. So if you want to scale your real estate, that's the way to do it. So if you want to learn more about how to get into apartments, I have a free training I created. It's called creatively, Apartments 101. This is really for people who have already done a flip and have done a rental. And how do you take that and apply scale to it by getting into apartment building? So I kind of go deep on each of these things, but I hope now that it kind of helps you shift your mind a little bit from single family house investing, and it really allows you to execute on what you want to do with real estate, and that is to achieve your financial goals so you can have the life that you've always wanted. So check it out, Apartments 101, and I will catch you next time.